Okay. Good evening, everybody, or good morning, whichever time you plan on listening to this particular podcast. We're glad that you joined us. This is the Turkish Diplomats Present Charming Noise. I am one of your co-hosts, Thomas Crofel, along with my other two co-hosts, Paul Hogue.
Hello.
And Calvin Roach.
I have something stuck. Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind.
This is going to be an interesting show already, I can tell.
Do we have to put the tweezers on Calvin again?
Maybe I did it on purpose. Anyway, so
the
electric tweezers.
Do what?
The electric tweezers. We'll use the electric tweezers.
That just sounds painful.
Right?
Makes a good
I gotta Google that now. I gotta see if that's a
Ladies and gentlemen, Columbia recording artist, the electric tweezers.
Present hair noise and a follicle. Okay, so today's let's just get into this.
Yeah, otherwise, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're just gonna keep rambling on about everything. So if you listened to our last episode, the last episode that we did was Mark of the Astro Zombies by Ted V. Mickle, or however his last name is pronounced.
Michaels,
yes. Okay. And that was, at the time we didn't know, a reimagining of the movie we're doing tonight.
Right.
In that one, evil extraterrestrials come to Earth and they zombify people and they run amok as they try to increase their numbers. And it was a very confusing movie and everything like that.
And by the way, not one mark among them.
Yeah.
I think that little galaxy thing that they would suddenly stop and grab their neck, that has to have been the mark. But what it did mechanic wise in the movie, I don't know.
But there was not one guy named Mark among them.
Well, it could be. Anyway, let's go back to our current movie.
Zombies. Yeah.
Let's do our movie now. We will, otherwise we'll wander down that rabbit hole again.
And I got a feeling we're going to do that anyway. So that movie, though, the Mark of the Astro Zombies, was made in 2004. This one, made by our same director, Ted V. Merkel. Well, I can't remember that last name for whatever reason.
It's Michaels.
But I think it's Michaels.
Okay. So Ted V. Michaels in 1968 did the original Astro Zombie movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, this one was actually much better, I thought.
This was actually a decent 1960s drive-in grindhouse kind of movie, you know? It was actually a lot tamer than I expected it to be, you know, going by what we watched last time.
It certainly made more sense.
There was a coherent story to this one. There really was. So yeah,
not a great story, but there's a story.
Yeah, there's a story.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean it's well, like I said, you know, if you were just a little kid and your mom and dad decided to treat you to a weekend, you know, on like a Saturday night, you guys went to the drive-in, you might have seen this movie or one very much like it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so here's the story for this one here. It's basically, there's a mad scientist, oddly enough, 1968, played by David Carradine, who's
John Carradine.
John Carradine.
Yeah.
Who is, you know, the mad scientist of all of those films. And he creates a superhuman monster out of dead bodies.
Yes.
And he's trying to figure out a way to control them. He's not having much luck, but there's an international spy ring, and the CIA are both interested in his project.
Yes.
And they're both trying to get the secrets for it. And there's where the conflict starts. Where the story starts, I'm not really sure.
Well, there's the lady, and it opens with the lady in the white Mustang.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, which, by the way, if you're a car fan, this is a good movie to watch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So she's got her white Mustang. She parks in the garage, and then the guy, and they call him several different things. They call him an Astro Man. They call him an Astro Zombie. There was Quasi Man was another name
Yeah.
that it was called, and he kills her with a weeding tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I dropped some stuff.
Ignore
Ignore me.
Kool-Aid all over the Mustang.
Well, and then later there's a scene of the car wreck where that whatever is dripping off the guy's hand is orange and thick. That was supposed to be blood too.
I think it was weather beater or something.
and as soon as the creepy guy showed up at the scene of the car wreck, the first word in my head was Igor. That's the Igor in this movie.
Well, he had like the squinty eye and the bug eye and a hump and cool sideburns.
And he was the director.
Was he really? I didn't think he knows. Holy cow.
Yep.
I had no idea.
Francho, which I thought his name was Frencho for the long.
Well, they called him. I thought they said Frencho, Bradshaw, Crenshaw. I never really nailed down what they were trying to call the guy.
I had to look it up, honestly, because I think they did say different things.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I know Carradine kept calling him Egon or something like that.
It was just, I mean, it was all over the place for that was where that was. And of course, with Carradine, he was probably also really drunk and slurring his words anyway. For a lot of that,
more than likely. So it was. No, we shouldn't really harp on Carradine like that. He brings us much joy.
He does.
The man made 8 million films, for God's sake.
Yeah.
He's in my home movies, probably.
Probably.
He played the clown at Paul's 6th birthday party.
Right. Only I scared him away. There's actually, I mean, one thing that's different about this movie than the reimagining is that there are actual known actors in this movie.
Yes.
And apparently this was Wendell Corey's last movie. Now,
really?
Wendell Corey is, there's a meeting of all the doctors at one point early in the movie, and they're talking about everybody but John Carradine's character, DeMarco.
Yeah.
And but they're all talking about what they need to do. And the oldest guy is named Holman, and that's Wendell Corey. And he has some great unintentionally funny lines, including this one. And I'm going to try to do it like he did it, if you don't mind. Okay. Well, when a man doesn't know the difference between an experiment on an Air Force officer and a cadaver, well, I think it's time to drop him from the team. That's a great freaking line.
And he did it with such sincerity too.
I mean, he has a very cool, I cannot get his voice because it's this deep, resonant kind of voice.
Mm-hmm.
And and which is part of what adds to the humor of that moment. And in fact, right before that, he starts naming all these different parts that DeMarco has put into the characters, and you know, the plastic pancreas, and different things he names, and it's just a long list of stuff that they just made up, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, there was, you know, talking about the different parts, you know, like whenever, I think it's, I can't remember who brings it up first, but they're talking about the benefits of this experiment, you know, unkillable, bulletproof, can't be frozen to death, or, you know, it's basically an unstoppable killing machine.
It's the forerunner of AI.
Yeah. So they're like, so, you know, and that's why these other agencies want to get hold of it. And the, you know, of course, the you know, our quote unquote dragon lady who was in the last movie we watched, a much older version of her. What was her name?
Euro Santana.
Yeah, Satana. Yeah, she. Once again, I'm puzzled why she is even in this movie.
Well, she's the head of the international spy ring, because they had her, who I'm assuming was part of the Asiatic spy force. Rafael Campos, who's been in 1,000 things. If you ever see him, you're gonna go,
yeah,
oh, yeah, that dude. Part of the South American thing, and then I forget the name of the guy that was the Russian, who I loved in this film.
Yeah,
great. And
oh, there's one really important thing here that we need to point out before we go any further. The movie was co-written by Paul
Wayne Rogers.
Wayne Rogers.
Trapper John.
Max, Trapper John. I had to look that up twice to make sure it wasn't like a, you know, misinformation somehow, but it's true. Wayne Rogers. I was like, wow. Okay.
It reminds me of the fact that like Roger Ebert co-wrote Valley of the Shadow of the Valley, or Valley of the Shadow of the Dolls.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's you know, I guess co-writing is one of those things you just have to do to get where you need to be in Hollywood.
I guess so. It's okay, Mr. Rogers. We can either bend you over the casting couch, or you can co-write this movie.
Well, you know, when this film came out, and I thought this was a hilarious thing, Variety wrote, there is almost nothing good to say about this horror sci-fi.
It does. I mean, at least half of the movie is either people turning dials or cars driving down the street.
Yeah.
You know, if it wasn't
which was one of my favorite parts of this.
Yeah.
Because what was they had like a ham radio box. Okay, so here's the situation for our listeners. They have somehow figured out, Rafael Campos has figured out the Mexican faction of this cartel, that you can take and somehow use this ham radio to zoom in on a capacitor in a neighborhood within Los Angeles in 1968, a city that is 9,000 miles wide and 8,000 miles long, and they're going up and down every street, turning a little dial on this radio with a round rabbit ear antenna, and they are just drive. I mean, there's nothing to it.
And the sound effect, by the way, was used in Star Trek.
Yes, it was. It was. I
I
noticed
recognized it right away. I'm like, well, I think it's like the tricorder sound, maybe, or something.
Yeah.
It was a sensor sound. Yeah, yeah. It was one of the sensor sounds. At the very beginning of the movie and the very ending, or where they tie together. I'll try to come back to it in a minute, but help me remember that. So
Okay. Yeah, so the mad doctor has got a secret lair someplace in the city.
mhm.
And our three sane doctors, who I'm going to say are the CIA faction of this film. Why doctors are in the CIA faction searching down criminals, I don't know, but that's what they're doing.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and they, after their meeting, which was one of the highlights of the film where they're talking, they decide that they are going to do, of all things, start their search at a strip club.
Yes, yeah. Um, because it was one of the agents, his girlfriend, who was and is a lab assistant or another doctor working with the good guy doctor professor. Um, it's those two and one of their other friends, who's in the CIA, sitting around a table watching a girl covered in psychedelic body paint do a really bad go-go dance.
To Middle Eastern.
I've seen Paul do much better ones.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but you have to admit the guy banging on those bongo drums was really getting into it.
He was.
Yeah. He,
It's one of those things that you see in a lot of movies from that time. I mean, this is really kind of a sleazy thing to go see, right?
yeah.
Except the audience are like the most, the straightest people that they could possibly find.
They're all in suits.
They're all in
and
suits.
evening
They're like
gowns.
40 and 50 years old. They all have jobs,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're like, yeah, let's go watch the painted half naked lady dance to bongos.
And was this the same bar where Chura Satana's character was in at the beginning?
I believe so. Yeah, it was like their secret lair.
Yeah, because it was the same server who brought the drinks to her party, who brought drinks later in the dancing scene.
There was a lot of activity around that one particular bar.
I was surprised the cops haven't staked it out.
Well, it is a CIA hangout, so they're not.
I think the Dragnet guys were there, for God's sakes. Roddy and Gannon were already staking the place out, but they have, too much morality to go inside.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, I listened to a lot of these old radio serials from the 50s and 60s and 40s and 30s, and Dragnet is one of them. Before they became television, they were a radio serial. That is the most uptight bunch of writers in the world, and it's and they are all just pumping out pro-America propaganda with every other line.
Yep. So yeah, they go to they watch they start with that lab, or excuse me, at that bar, and then it's just sort of like 30 minutes of just stuff going on that don't really contribute too much to the movie.
Right.
Well, the Russian guy shows up with the Mexican, and they spot somebody, I forget who it was, and they're like, the Russian's like, we're going to kill him right now, and the Mexican guy's like, no, let's wait till he leaves. And then the guy leaves, and somebody from someplace else that they never address who he was or anything like that. He just shows up, knocks out a chauffeur, puts on his hat and coat, and then runs over one of the FBI people.
Yeah.
He runs over the Russian.
Yeah, he runs over the Russian guy. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it's okay. Yeah.
After the Russian had come in there and quote unquote negotiated for double the money that he had, that he originally asked for. He walks outside, and this unnamed entity who, if you watch that scene closely enough, judo chops in the best Captain Kirk style. Judo chops the original chauffeur down, to the ground like 8 or 9 times.
Hey man, you cannot knock Kirk Fu. Judo chop.
So I was a little confused about something, and maybe this kind of connects two parts of the movie. So there's after the conference of doctors, then there's the car accident, and this guy's laying there, and Francho comes and grabs him and brings him back to Dr. DeMarco's lab.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, DeMarco is explaining that he's had to make a second. This is right at the end of the movie. He says he's had to make a second Astro Man because, and he says it very dismissively, well, unfortunately, the other one had a psychotic killer's brain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which he says is very.
Whose
so
brain
is
did
the
we
guy,
put in there?
is the guy from the accident the new Astro's on? Is he Astro Man too?
Yes.
I think so. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because at one point they were trying to figure out, they thought they had killed Astro Zombie 1, but then there's another murder, and they were trying to figure out, well, are there more than one of these?
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Remember in Mark of the Astro Zombies, there was that bottle of red fluid and the bottle of green fluid that we would see hooked up to the person being turned into an Astro Zombie.
They're draining the blood and pumping in the Mountain Dew.
Well, they at one point, Dr. DeMarco says, okay, begin the blood exchanger or something. And it's red and green liquids in the most non-scientific, non-sterile conditions imaginable. It's just a clear hose in a water container with a hole cut in it. I mean, they just stuck these two hoses into these big plastic water cans.
It looks like a hospital enema cart.
I wouldn't know, but
with lights. Well, unfortunately, I do. Oh, and by the way, at one point, this is towards the end of the film, he's working on Astro Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
Francho is off to the side, and he's got some girl strapped down to the table. She's wearing a bikini, of course.
Yeah.
And she's screaming, and he like knocks her out, and he's gonna put these same tubes. He's apparently gonna do an extraction to her.
Yeah.
And that's when John Carradine turns towards him and says, please, or something along, I'm
paraphrasing.
Close to paraphrasing, please, I need help with this Astro Man. You'll have time for your own experiments later.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Which is kind of amazing when you think about it. Like,
my jaw dropped a little bit on that one.
This is because I was like, wait, when did they get this other girl? I said, it's not the one, because there was a girl that was killed at two of the doctors.
Yeah, that was assistant number 1.
Yeah, assistant number 1. Yes.
And apparently they explain how she was probably not the actual target, that he was going after Janine, because I guess Janine used to work for DeMarco or something like that.
They never really made that clear, I don't think.
Yeah.
But I know that you could definitely tell the difference, which, this indicates that the Astro Zombie or Igor had very, very low intelligence, because the CIA guy's girlfriend, Janine, or whatever her name was redheaded as she could be. Almost Daphne redhead from the cartoon.
With longer hair that was,
Yeah, and this was obviously an Asian woman with short cropped hair.
I did appreciate, though, that Dr. DeMarco spoke to Francho like he actually cared about him. He's explaining all of these procedures he's doing in the same way one of us might with a 6 or 7 year old child or grandchild or whatever. I'm doing this, and we're not going to use made up words. These are the real words we're going to use. And he never yelled at
Yeah,
Francho.
you kept expecting him to be abusive of Francho. And later he
Yeah.
really compliments Francho to Satana, so she understands, oh, he's loyal and he's
Yeah,
house trained and
because he was standing there and just explaining this techno babble procedure in a way that like he really cared about Francho, like he was
then
like
he
his
says he's
son.
unfortunately on mute. And then one goes, well, that's good for him.
Well, I guess that's how he took the assistant number one and was starting to perform his experiments on her. And
Mhm.
who knows what nefarious purposes, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, he had in mind for her.
Which, so he like leaves that table. We never see her again.
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
No, I mean, later action happens. And in fact, the last 5 minutes of the movie, do I want to say this yet?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Because they tie up all the loose ends, except for the girl who was on the table. She's just been shoved off in the corner.
That's true. I mean,
I assume
it does.
she's starved to death or hypothermia. I never found
Now,
her.
keep in mind that there is a series of these Astro Zombie films. She may come back in one of the later ones
that's
as an
true.
Astro Zombie.
That's
Doesn't mean
true.
we're going to
However-
watch it over these.
I don't want to watch any other Astro.
I don't either. That's why I was afraid there for a moment. I was kind of afraid.
We broke the curse of the last movie by watching this one.
Yeah.
Which, let's be honest, this is still a bad movie,
Yes.
but
Yes.
it's
But-
a far better. But it's I dozed a little, but other than that, it was a far more entertaining movie.
Yes. And if you could say it was coherently written, it was pretty darn close. I mean, because like you said, they did tie all this stuff up at the end.
They do. They have to do it in a rush because.
Yeah.
So I have one paragraph that goes through. I'm going to go through all the killings.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
once the killings start, now there's been several murders through the movie. Oh, and there's another foreign, like a Russian. I don't know if he's Russian or Bulgarian or something like that, and he gets killed when they get to DeMarco's house. One pulls out his switchblade and cuts this guy, so he's done for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they go in. Now the killing.
Juan was fast with that switchblade.
He was, and it was a little. It's like, oh yeah, the Dominican would prefer the knife, which I thought was a little racist, but that's just
typical of the time.
But he used a gun too, so everything.
And he tossed it from hand to hand like he did the knife, which I thought was
that's true. He wanted to join the Sharks, Okay, one kills Francho. Then he runs outside and the cops kill one.
Yeah.
Which these cops show up for whatever, they get called or whatever to DeMarco's house. And by the way, they have no idea where to park. They're just like stopping each of their, and they just give up and get out of their cars.
Yeah, they pretty much, it's like they parked a block and a half away and then had to run to the secret lab.
Then Astro Man number one, the one that's got the crazy brain, he comes out and he kills two civilians.
Yeah.
Which I don't know where they came from. They may have been, one of them may have been one of the other older doctors. I don't know. It's just suddenly there's two guys in suits and one gets his head cut off.
Yeah.
And
the
other one takes the machete because Astro Man has a giant machete. I forgot to mention this.
It's the same machete that they used in the one we watched the first time. One of those. It's the exact same kind of machete.
That's
in Mark of
in Mark of the Astro Zombies. It's that big machete.
So then he splits the other guys. He puts the other one right through the middle of the dude's head and kills him. And then he goes after Janine.
Mm-hmm.
And the other dude that's not Janine, boyfriend, but is kind of part of a throuple with them. He
Yeah.
comes and tries to, and Astro Man like slings him to the ground, and Janine is screaming crazy. And anyway, it goes back to the scene switches back to the lab. Satanic shoots DeMarco.
Yes.
I think he's dead, but he's not quite dead. Then it goes back outside again, and Astro Man #1 dies because as DeMarco is dying, apparently he has some sort of remote control thing that he
Yeah.
can shut down the Astro Man zombie, and
Yeah.
he apparently flips that switch. Sure would have been easier if he had done that before he'd already killed 3 or 4 people, but we don't want to get too detailed. So he cuts after. So Astro Man #1 dies out on that front grass, and then Astro Man #2, Satana shoots DeMarco again because it's clear that her gun didn't do it right the first time, and Astro Man #2, who is apparently the car accident victim and is now wearing the same kind of crap rubber mask that is all they bothered to do for the Astro Man. Grabs Satana and shoves her into, I guess, a fuse box or some sort of deal with, and they both are electrocuted and drop smoking to the ground.
There is a bit of science here that actually makes some sense. I thought, wow, because they're talking about, well, at one point, Doctor Carradine's character explaining to Francho that the creature never needs to eat; it runs on solar power, and it stores energy in its body when there's no light. So so the creature is essentially immortal, and I'm thinking, man, they are really pitching some actual science in here, like little sprinkles on a cupcake. It just bits of
okay. So earlier in the film, though, when the Astro zombie attacked Janine in her house,
I knew you were about to bring this up.
Yeah.
And the CIA agent boyfriend jumps the guy and knocks the battery pack off of him.
Yeah.
He immediately panics, grabs a flashlight, which is sitting on the bedside table.
He brought the flashlight in because he was
okay
at the fuse box. Yeah.
And he throws it up there to the solar thing on his forehead, and he's running out with the flashlight up to his head like he's a light bright unicorn.
Well, they never explain.
Unicorn is going on my list, man.
They never explain where these, and he used the words, photovoltaic cells are on the body of the Astro Man. And at first, I thought he was just shining the flashlight in his eye because he's apparently brain damaged or something. And then I realized he's holding it up above his eyes, recharging himself so he can run away.
That's a pretty good detail for a B movie like this.
Yeah, it is.
It is. It's excellent.
Yeah.
And just like, in fact, I thought the same thing to myself. I thought, man, why? If the movie we watched the first time had at least this much sense in it, it would have been okay. What's happening here is they're doing things that make sense.
Yeah. It actually had excellent dialogue for the most part.
Yeah.
Some science to it. And I thought great music. And as Paul pointed out, fantastic cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really are great cars in this movie. And so I'm thinking that maybe the fact that everything's sort of tied together better, that is Wayne Rogers' contribution to this movie.
Think you're right.
I think he's the kind of the guy that does the cleanup on Michael's scripts. Like, dude, if you knock off the battery pack, how does he run?
Yeah.
Not just run halfway back across Los Angeles to DeMarco's house in the middle of the night, especially because there's no sun. he grabs the flashlight from the dude and holds it on, and that explains the so there's little things like that. I think that was Wayne Rogers' contribution. I think he was the cleanup dude on this script.
Probably right. Just this is the personal thing here that I noticed. I'm going to throw it in here before we run out of time. It opens up with the credits part with these wind up robots, kind of staggering around a parking lot.
And there's opening and closing credits.
Yeah, opening and closing of these little wind up robots. And, of course, they've got combat sounds overdubbed and everything.
Weird.
But there is one of those toy robots that had the little gears inside its chest.
Yeah.
I had that same toy.
Wow.
Yes.
I had one very similar. I didn't have one exactly like those, but and I love that thing. That my toy robot was my favorite toy.
The thing was noisy as hell, and and of course, I had to stop myself from saying it out loud, even though there was nobody else in the house. I wanted to do our Gumby robot rap, but I didn't.
I can remember Mom actually getting on to me, like trying to be nice about it, going, "Why don't you go play with your robot back in your room?"
Yeah.
Which is another way of saying, Mama's got a headache, and if I hear that goddamn robot again.
Okay. Hey, I want to throw this one piece of trivia into all this mix.
Sure.
Guess who did a song about this movie?
Who?
The Misfits.
Really?
That
on their album Walk Among Us, they did a song called Astro Zombies.
Wow.
And it has such lyrics as, "With just a touch, my burning hands, I send my Astro Zombies to rape this land." And then it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, we used to sing that in church choir. I remember.
Yeah.
I'll have to add that link on our page, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. That's good. The other little piece of trivia I was going to throw in was we're talking about the great Rafael Campos, who had just tons of credits and a lot of really good movies and TV shows. He was also married to Dinah Washington at one point, a few years before this was made. She was one of the best jazz singers ever.
Oh, okay.
Their marriage was known. I knew she had this bad marriage or this marriage that didn't go like they were constantly fighting. But I didn't know it was him.
Yeah.
And she basically died in drinking herself to death about a year after they got divorced.
Wow.
So,
with all of that, I'm going to have to wrap us up here. Hopefully, we'll get everything in. So if you like our podcast, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. You can hear us anywhere and everywhere that you can find a podcast.
And we're on YouTube now.
We're
on
YouTube now. What's the address, Paul?
Damn,
YouTube something.
It's look up the Turkish diplomat. I think it's Turkish diplomats.
Yeah.
Well, the boys ran out of time again, didn't they? And by the way, that Roger Ebert movie I was mentioning, that was Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. So this is the Turkish diplomat known as Paul Hogue. I'm putting in a little extra message here today. We had a friend of ours that we lost last year named Tamala Dement, and she was a good friend of ours and was kind of a big part of our old bad movie nights many years ago. And we just wanted to mention they were having they had a kind of a celebration of life for her today. She was a really cool person, that very talented, very sweet and funny. She was also a photographer, actually made a photography business, which a lot of people don't get to take the thing that they love and make a business out of it. And it takes a lot of gumption to do that. And she did it. And anyway, she left us, unfortunately, way too early due to ALS. And we just wanted to mention her today, and that we are thinking of her and her family and all of our friends. So just wanted to say that if you feel like it, there's a lot of good organizations out there that that work to reduce the impact of ALS on people's lives, and think about that if you will. That's all we've got to say. We hope you join us for the next episode and that you enjoyed this one. Bye bye.